My name is Betsy Yager, just to let you know who I am. And I'll kind of go through and introduce who everybody is up here. At the other end of the table here, we have, oh gosh, John Gunnell, I'm so sorry, automotive author.
Hey John, you have to kind of wave to everybody there. Do your best
Do the
parade wave.
And we have Shell Tomlin sitting next to him. He's the president of the Volkswagen Club of America. And then next we have Dr. Darby, king of restoration. All right, next we have Tory Alonzo, and he is a Herbie expert as well as a producer of the Bug movie. And he has a magnificent parade wave. Next we have Bruce Meyers, and clearly he's the inventor of and creator of the Meyers Manx Dune Buggy.
Yay, Bruce!
And I forget who this last guy is. Mike Yager, chief cheerleader of Mid-America Motorworks. All right. Let's start with the first question, being that it's so hot out. Summer is officially here. What recommendations do you have for fellow Volkswagen lovers who are getting their cars ready for some summer fun? And whoever'd like to start. Mike Yager.
Go to the car show. Come on, it's summertime. What do you do in the summer other than go to car shows, Betsy? Drag your cars out, clean them up, dream of the car that you wished you had, go to the car show, find it.
Sure. All right.
Hello.
You're live.
The most important thing that you can do with your car in the summer is get out and enjoy it. Don't let it sit in the garage collecting dust.
I'll add to that too. Make sure you have a fire extinguisher. This is huge. I'm so tired of seeing pictures on Facebook of bugs on fire on the side of the road. So I always tell people, kind of have your little spare toolbox that's got, maybe an extra set of points, things that sort of tend to go wrong on the road. If you're running a Pertronics electronic ignition, have that plan B, have that backup. Obviously, go through the whole checklist, check your fuel lines. They look okay for a big road trip. We've got a lot of the Pittsburgh guys out here. That's a long drive, you guys. So, and they didn't have one single mishap, I'm told. So they were obviously diligent in checking their fuel lines. They all have fire extinguishers. They didn't have to use them, knock on wood. So I always tell people that. Make sure you're prepared for the unexpected.
All right. Next question. We have seen a huge explosion in pricing of 21 window buses, early 50 Beetles, on and on. What do you guys see as the next classic Volkswagen?
That's all you know.
That's a tough question, really. I'm still in awe at the price of the buses are fetching today. And I can only add that I'm kicking myself daily for not getting more heavily involved in the buses years ago, as I have in the Beetles. But I think as time goes on, you're going to see that some of the more obscure cars are going to probably go up highly in price. And it just takes one to go across the auction at some outrageous figure to start the ball rolling.
And I think more so than any one model, it's the condition of what you got. If you have, a late model car that has 2,000 original miles on it, that's a pretty sought after thing these days. Originality is where it's at. People aren't really going for the restored cars as much as they used to. So if you've got anything original, it doesn't matter what it is, keep it nice, and it's going to go nowhere but up in value. And I will add, I think Karmann Ghias are still highly, highly underrated as far as value. Before I came to Funfest, I did a quick search of low-light Ghias, meaning 56 to 59s. They have much more Porsche-like lines. There was a project car for like $3,500 in California that was pretty much complete. That's insane. So I think in the next probably 5 years, they've been saying that this is going to happen for decades now. I think in the next 5 years, you're really going to see an explosion in pricing on these really early low-light Ghias too.
I think it's a double-edged question. There's a low end of the market where you can buy low and sell high. And I think at that end of the market, the Super Beetle is a good thing to look at, because I saw one in the paper 2 weeks ago. I almost bought it just to drive it down here. It's $1,200, and you can't get much for $1,200. Then you got the other end of the, what's going to go up to the 6 figures or 5 figures, and that's a different question. And what I see here is a lot of interest in Type 3s and squarebacks and fastbacks, and I think they're going to explode a little bit and go up in value to the high end. So there's two ends of the market, and I think there's room to get in good investments in on a Volkswagen at both ends of the market. That's a kind of neat thing.
I'm listening to all this. I live in California, where there's a Volkswagen junkyard down the road from me. Probably has 300 VWs stacked up. Loads and loads of beautiful Volkswagens waiting to be restored. I think I'll go home because of what Tory just said and buy all the Karmann Ghias. There's probably 40 of them in that place. And they have all their glass in them, and they're all straight. There's lots of things missing, but it's all available. So for me to get rich, I think I'm going to go home and follow what Tory said. Go home and get all those pretty little cars. I hope you're not wrong, because I'll be poor.
You gotta come find me.
You know, I think the bus market's going to continue to go strong. And Tory was talking yesterday about the number of 15-window buses that are getting converted to a few more windows, adding 8 windows. And if you think about it, that would be a market that I would chase, would be the 15-window bus, because as soon as they all get converted to something else, now there's a shortage of, you know, I look for oddities in markets. I look for, you know, I'm an early subscriber to a market. You know, we were talking earlier, at what point do some of the panel vans start having some interest? Because they're good-looking vehicles, very unique, and they kind of fly under the radar screen. They're the stepchild to the 23 window, and yet I think from a look standpoint, some of the most interesting vehicles in the whole bus family.
I agree with that. And there's so many interesting M-code options that were available on these panel buses and some of the trucks. Anything oddball is going to be worth a ton of money. There were wide body variants of the single cab for people that wanted to haul plywood or pipe or anything that, you know, your conventional single cab wouldn't carry. So swivel seat panel vans with the seat that would actually rotate to the back. Double doors obviously are always going to be hot. Anything that's got a unique M code on it, that's gold as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the collector market, you look at the odd, the unique, you travel before the herd, so to speak, instead of with the herd. And I think it was interesting, you know, obviously part of our business is Corvette. Corvette has had a stellar rise in the top-end cars. And all at once, it was okay for car collectors to put, serious car collectors, whatever that is, as if those of us who have other cars aren't serious, to put a Corvette in there, because now it's a $1 million plus car. And I think as the bus market keeps going up and up, I think that brings in a whole other group of people. And that's both good news and bad news for the grassroots people. It makes it very expensive. For the person who says, I'm into collector cars, it takes a whole group of cars into the collector car world with a different viewpoint.
I agree with you, Mike. And it's really frustrating for me as well, because here's a car I've been so loyal to all my life. You know, the whole reason I got into it is because it's something I could work on, something that was cheap. You know, parts were plentiful. Now all those NOS parts are sought after. People are scooping them up. And so I'm competing now with all of these other people that seem to be kind of just jumping on the Volkswagen bandwagon. And it doesn't seem fair, because we've all been VW people our whole lives, and then now all of a sudden we're competing with these, you know, huge money car collectors that basically show up at these big box auctions and handpick whatever they want, and they get it because they've got deep pockets. So it's a double-edged sword for sure.
As far as Beetles, I've been looking around taking pictures for this book that I'm working on, which is going to be a complete history of Volkswagen. And I don't see, I see a lot of, not a lot, but I see a good number of Beetles before 57, and I see a lot of Beetles from 63 up. But that window in there from 58 to 61, which is when I first started seeing Volkswagens actually, I don't see too many of those cars, and I think maybe there's a niche there that somebody's missing.
All right.
And actually, you know what? I'll add something else to just kind of based on what he said. what you notice is there's sort of a progression, okay? A lot of us, yeah, we missed the boat on the head Muellers, so then they're going to the split window. Well, now splits have gone through the roof. I don't know if you've seen the screening of the Bug movie yet, but there's a gray 1950 Hoffman standard split window that we use in some of the scenes that we filmed with Ewan McGregor. That car sold a couple weeks ago for $85,000. And that's just a standard early Hoffman export split. I mean, it's a rare car, granted, but I mean, 10 years ago, that's not anything that probably would have even gotten a magazine article mentioned, you know? I mean, they were fairly, you know, out there. I mean, granted, it is a rare car because it's one of the earlier ones to come in, but my point being is, okay, now the splits are out of people's realms, ovals are going crazy. Even the 58 to 64 cars, the smaller window, big window Beetles, they're getting up there. So you're going to see people progressively getting sort of pinched out of these different brackets. And sooner or later, like you said, we'll be to the Super Beetles, guys. We're going to be to these, I mean, there's people scooping up early rabbits, you know, the early production 75 swallowtail rabbits, I believe they're called. And I'm not even a water-cooled guy, but this is stuff you've got to take note of. And like Mike said, be ahead of the game before it hits. I mean, the writing's on the wall. Do your math, and you can see where the trend is headed with this. And if you've got the time and the money to make some of these investments now, I think they're going to pay off tenfold in the not so near future. You know, hang on to them and give them a good dry home, and it's better than any stock you can buy right now. It really is.
I'm reminded of all this talk about the value of old Volkswagens. I was in my upholstery shop back in the days of the crazy days of the dune buggy. I was in my upholstery shop, Ted Brown, and there was a beautiful Volkswagen that was totally restored. It was probably a 1947. It was a split, and it was in gorgeous shape. It was ready to be upholstered, and the owner was in the store, and he said, yeah, that's mine. That's the third one in this country. Well, he left, and I went over to Ted, who owned the shop, and I said, do you realize you're about to upholster the third one in this country? He says, yeah, I've upholstered 7 of them. Where are we going?
Well, actually, that's a great segue. I'd like to bring up the Meyers-Manx topic, which is obviously a name that is synonymous with Volkswagen. I'd like to start by asking everyone else besides Bruce about how the vehicle has changed the face of the Volkswagen hobby, and then I'd also like to ask Bruce after if he could give us a brief overview of what's next to come with Meyers-Manx. All right.
All right, I'll take this. I think he's done a lot of things for the VW community, and one of the most important is you've given people confidence to work on their own car. You've made people believe that they can actually be a car builder too, and that's a huge service you've done to car people everywhere, not just Volkswagen people. You know, here's a car that maybe you wrecked, and now you think, oh, great, what am I going to do? Now I can take it to the junkyard, I guess. Well, if it's just the body that's messed up, take the body off, take, what is it, 18 inches out of the floor pan? 14, there you can tell I'm not a buggy guy. I'm learning. Take 14 inches out of the floor pan, and you've got a brand new repurposed vehicle that, you know, you take care of it, it's going to last forever because fiberglass doesn't rust. It's pretty fantastic.
Okay, the biggest difference in the buggy club and other clubs is that when you have a buggy, it's a car that didn't come out of a factory. Well, the chassis did, but every dune buggy is as different as people because it's more personal. Volkswagens and Jeeps and Corvettes and Porsches and all that rest of them all came out of factories, and they get a chance to change them and paint them and change their wheels and tires and make them zoomy and all that, but they don't get near as personal as a dune buggy. A dune buggy is probably the sign of bad taste, actually. But whatever the taste, you know what it is? It's a love affair, and it brings them closer together. I've had more and more people come up to me, and men would say, I want to thank you, shake my hand, for keeping my son out of trouble, because he looked like he was about ready to smoke too much pot. He showed me the picture of the dune buggy in the magazine. Look at the bitchin' dune buggy, Dad. So Dad went down and bought the kit, the old Volkswagen chassis, or the old wrecked Volkswagen, whatever it took, and they spent several months bonding. So it's a nice story to say that the dune buggy was the reason for a family coming together. Often the buggy is 50 years old and the guy's standing there and he's 62 years old and he was 12 years old when the car was being built. And he says, that's the car, I'm the son, dad's dead, but I'll never get rid of this car. It's just a huge love affair. So the buggy became much more personal in these ways than just cleaning up an old wreck, making it go again. Not bad, anything bad in that, because we're Americans that roll up our sleeves and get the job done. I think I come from the Second World War, where I remember the best thing about that was that all Americans worked to the same cause, to get rid of the Axis. Everybody worked so hard. Jay Leno just said on a little piece he did, he said, they were shooting down 5 of our airplanes a day, but we were producing 7 or 8 a day. We just went faster than they did. We could outproduce them because we knew how to go get the job done. And I think that spirit is in the business of the playing around with cars, restoring them, rebuilding them, making them over again. It's a very piece of creative activity for a man to do that, or for a whole family with the kids. So the buggy is a thing that brings people together. It's also, the message is fun. The fun is that when you cannot drive one anywhere without a lot of toots, honks, waves, thumbs ups, high signs, all the rest of it. The Volkswagen Beetle has a share of that. It's the very thing that Hitler, they say, the Japanese culture says in all things can be found something beautiful, even in Hitler. He told Ferdinand Porsche to build that car. And here we are with a happiness that Hitler directed. Imagine that. Okay, take off on some other.
Okay, moving on. The Bug movie. So the Bug movie builds up upon the Bus movie, which was, this is the prequel. Tory, what can we expect from the Bug movie? For those not named, please give us your thoughts about the great media that it's producing and the influence on the hobby.
We're going to go with a little bit different format for the Bug. I came on board after the Bus was done, and Damon sort of got with me, and I told him I'd love to help out with the project. Early on, it was just supposed to be to help out with a Herbie segment that we were going to do, and it grew into a lot more than that, because I found myself talking to Damon almost daily for a while, and he was like, okay, I'm looking for this in the hobby. And I was like, I got just the guy. You know, we can fly out there, we can film it, no problem. So long story short, he ended up bringing me on as a producer, and we've been at it for quite some time now, and I've been here for a lot of the steps of the way for the Bug movie. Our number one concern with the Bus movie, and number one complaint, was that it wasn't long enough. It ended and people were like, we want more. There's so much more to tell. So that's the problem that we're finding now. I think he's a little overwhelmed with just how much material, how many stories there are out there. I mean, for every car out here, there's probably 6 stories associated with it, because you figure that car has led all these multiple lives and different people that it's touched. So there's an infinite amount of stories out there. So you're definitely going to see a lot more content. You're going to see a lot more of the personal connections that people have with these vehicles. And I think you're going to enjoy how Damon masterfully sort of weaves this common thread of a car being restored throughout the whole film, which was very well done. I mean, most people probably would have just showed the restoration and then touched on all these other stories. He seamlessly edited this so we constantly are going back and forth, and you see progress, and then we find out some other little tidbit about the history of the Volkswagen or some other interesting person that was involved. So, you know, we didn't have that in the Bus. We didn't really touch much, you know, on an actual Bus from start to finish with a project. And I think that's going to be a great thing to watch. I really do. And so many of us can sort of associate with how that is, the pitfalls of a car. You know, sometimes you do want to just walk away from it and not touch it for a week because you're so frustrated because this part didn't fit or because that didn't start. But it's something we've all experienced, and I think you did a great job capturing that.
Great. All right. Well, whether it's a Volkswagen, Corvette, Porsche, Ferrari, clubs play such an important part in the automotive hobby. What message would you give to someone who is not in a club on joining a club? And Shell, that's a great one to start with you.
Join.
Do it.
You know, it was interesting. Yesterday I was listening to Tory's presentation, and he talked about things you should do if you're interested in buying your first VW. And the first thing out of his mouth was buy books, read, go to car shows, join a club. And so many people, when they get involved in a hobby, they will look at a car, decide they want to buy one, and then buy the wrong car and start, in my opinion, on the wrong foot. You know, the guys and gals in the audience, you know as much about the cars as anybody up here. So when someone wants to buy a car, clubs are really the first place to go. That's the residual group of knowledge. They've suffered through everything. You know, all of us, we've had a car, you know what goes wrong with them, you know what to look out for, and, you know.
Somebody in the club knows what to look out for. You know, I've been involved in Volkswagens for...
Get your microphone. We can hear you, but they can't.
Is it on?
It's on.
Okay.
Then you look at it and talk. It's an amazing little thing.
I've been involved in Volkswagens for almost 60 years, and there isn't a week that goes by, and especially a show like this that goes by, that I don't learn something that I've missed over the last 60 years. Guy was telling me today about 15-window buses, and I think 2 months ago I never heard of a 15-window bus. I thought they just had 21-window buses and 23-window buses. I'm not totally into buses, although I was at one time. I'm into Beetles now, and there isn't, you know, hardly a week go by that I don't learn something about Beetles, or even the Beetle that I own, that I didn't know before. And it's all from other members of clubs who have experienced what trouble I'm going through, and he knows the answer. I handle a lot of emails that come in from our website, www.vwclub.org. Write that down, little plug. And it's amazing that how few of the questions I can answer myself. But I do know somebody who has the answer, somebody that's into Beetle, somebody that's into buses, somebody that's into convertibles, somebody that's into Karmann Ghias, and I've got a network of people that I can call on or forward the email to that will answer the question. And actually being in a club is about the only way you can have, and especially with our club, we're a national club. We've got a lot of local little chapters around, but the networking that you can get with a national club like ours is just phenomenal. You'd be amazed how many people are out there. If you just put the word out, somebody says, "Oh yeah, I know how to do that," or "I had that trouble and here's how I fixed it." And there've been problems that I had for years that I just couldn't figure out, and I just grumbled at a car show about it to somebody, and they said, "Oh yeah, I did that 10 years ago. What have you been waiting for?" And they showed me how to fix it, and it's just, you know, a simple little fix. But there's people out there that know something about everything. And if you get involved in a local club or you get involved in a national club, you can usually find the answer to what you're looking for.
I think for me, part of the fun of owning a Volkswagen is the people. It's the camaraderie that you get. It's you know, the friends you make for life. I've had the pleasure of knowing the Yager family for 10 years now. I've known Darby for 15. Some of my very best friends are Volkswagen people. 2 days and we're already inseparable. Some of my best friends are Volkswagen people. The majority of my best friends are Volkswagen people. And if you don't put yourself out there and make these friends and join these clubs, how are you ever going to meet these people? You know, I mean, I think you're really kind of cheating yourself on a lot of the experience of owning a vintage Volkswagen if you don't, you know, participate. Get out there, go to these car shows with people. I felt bad because my Pittsburgh crew, the Fresh Air VW Club, they all drove out here, and I'm like a prima donna. I'm flying, and but I'll catch up with them at shows this summer. But my point being that sometimes it's not where you're going. It's how you get there.
I have another reason. When you get real old like me, all your friends die. Go join a club. You get brand new friends again.
Bruce, you have more friends. I mean, everybody here is your friend. You just don't know that yet.
When we have club runs with 100, 200 dune buggies. We had one with over 300 dune buggies. I was surrounded by love. And I feel like my 2 or 3 friends that are still alive, they're at home waiting to die. I'm waiting to live. I want to go and bring them with me. Come on. Life is a gift. Take advantage of it. Do the best you can to be happy. Don't be sad. You can make yourself happy by joining a club, a car club. It's full of camaraderie and love.
Well, if you look at the groups of people around here today, it's predominantly the clubs. I mean, that's, the buggy clubs that come up, the Great River, the Buggy Meisters, those guys support us every year. They're here. If you need a piece of knowledge about a buggy, you just go right over there and you can get any question you might have, you can get it solved right over there.
That's a good point. I've got a very large clientele of Volkswagen owners all over the United States, North America, Canada, etc. And a lot of times I'll get a call from someone that's seen one of their cars or is looking to buy one, and they'll ask me questions about what's a good year to buy, what kind of style, what would I recommend, and charges and stuff. And one of the first things I'll tell them is look around in your area and find a club. And I can pretty much repeat what all you guys have said so far, but it's very important to surround yourself with like-minded people when you're dealing with a vintage machine like a Volkswagen, and share everyone else's knowledge.
Well, I belong to a lot of clubs over the years, and I never could have written all the books that I wrote without having access to people that were in clubs and helped me write those books and provided information. We have a unique club at home. It's not a Volkswagen club, but it is for small cars. And we have our own clubhouse, and we have 2 lifts in the clubhouse, and we have a full shop there. And then we have a library, a tavern, a bar, a pub, and it's quite a place.
This crowd was real calm up here until you said you had a bar. Then they all started going, hey, I want to join that club.
You guys have any space for more members?
We have 160 family members, and it's pretty cool. And it's different than any other club I've ever been in because they work on each other's cars. They fix each other's cars. They are constantly taking motors apart and putting them back together, and transmission. I have one guy in the club who does transmissions. He's a total fanatic on doing transmissions. I'm sure he's better than any shop in the country for that type of car. And it's about half the price of any place else. So it really works. The strange thing about that club is they have no newsletter or they have no magazine. They just communicate by internet, and then they go on events and tours and rallies and shows together. But it's really fantastic what they do, and I think it's kind of in other countries, in Australia, there are clubs like that have their own buildings and get together. It's not too common in this country, but I think it's coming.
I'm going to kind of step a little bit beyond a club, or maybe within a club. When I look out at our Volkswagen customers, I see younger people than I do at Corvette. And that's interesting. I mean, looking down in front, we have young people. You go around this audience, and I think, if you say, what's the future of any hobby? Well, it's the young people. And when I look around at the young people within Volkswagen, someone's going to own our cars down the road. And that's a good thing, because, we don't really ever own a car. We're just the caretaker for the next person. Because there will be a next person that's going to own our cars.
They're going to last longer than you do.
You guys.
I want to say something about all those Volkswagen buses that sell for $100,000. if they have a lot of windows in them, that makes them valuable. Can I go buy an old bus that hasn't got any windows and start welding windows into it and sell it for 100 grand?
I think the answer to that's no, but I mean, very creative, Bruce. The artist comes out in you.
It's just that human nature takes advantage of things.
I think Bruce should start a trend. I think you should start a trend, and then we'll follow along.
Yeah, let's go find all.
Well, he is the trendsetter, you know. So, Bruce, you do have that charisma to go out and start the trend.
Tell you what, you come up with a good idea, I'll steal it, make millions, and you'll get absolutely no credit. How's that sound?
Yeah, but Mike Yager is an ex-tool and die maker. He'd know how to make the stamping to stamp out those little windows and those little frames that have to be welded in.
Boy, aren't we a bunch of self-promoters up here? Betsy, you want to take control of this crowd?
Absolutely. Let's move on. Speaking of, new enthusiasts in the hobby, what is the best entry-level air-cooled Volkswagen that one can buy today?
I'll take that. I think the best entry-level Volkswagen to buy right now is an earlier mid-70s car. They're very underappreciated. They're usually very cheap, and they're great running and driving cars.
Super or standard? Super?
Super is fine. I don't have a problem with the Super Beetles. I think a lot of times I'll see somebody go out and buy a car, say, always wanted a Volkswagen, and they go out and buy a Volkswagen based on how it looks, not paying any attention to the year or the drivability or something. There's better driving cars than the 70s cars are better driving cars than the earlier cars. They're more powerful. And I've had instances where people have bought an older car and hated it, and they get a bad taste in their mouth about the vehicle or about the Volkswagen in general because they've bought a junky, ill-maintained car and are constantly trying to fix it or keep it on the road, or it breaks down, leaves them stranded. And I've one fella in particular I think I laugh about had my towing service on speed dial, and I saw this car once a week. And we would recommend that he take care of a bunch of work, and he wanted to do a lot of things himself, and God bless him for trying. He wasn't very good at it, but he basically wrote the car off, sold it to another one of my customers who did some work, got it reliable, and loves it. But I think the 70s cars are the most underappreciated and the best driving. So I think to answer that and try to make a short answer out of a long one, you've got 69, 70, 71, 72 in there. Great entry-level car.
I think you touched on the point, Darby, that someone that thinks they want something, go find a club, go find someone that has one and drive it. Bill Bowman and I were talking last night, someone saying, oh, I've always wanted a splitty bus. And guess what? They may drive different than they look. And then you drive one, you go, oh, this isn't what I wanted.
Maybe Vanagon's not so bad.
You had an expectation.
Absolutely.
That doesn't match how it drives. That doesn't make it a bad vehicle. So, looking at what's the best entry level, I don't know if I could really answer what would be the best entry level, but I would certainly want to drive something. Absolutely. And maybe not the specific car, but the style of car.
Right. I think so many of the early cars are romanticized too. I think people see them, they see the money that they're bringing, but 6-volt systems can be very quirky, as you know. I mean, there's a camaraderie among people when you find out that another car is still 6-volt and you have a 6-volt car. Like, oh, I know your troubles, I know what you've been through, kind of a deal.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to deal with that with a late model car. Anything 67 and up was 12-volt from the factory. So there's nothing wrong with a 70s Beetle. IRS, a much better handling car on the highway. You don't have to worry about camber compensators. You don't have to worry about the crosswinds being so white knuckle. It's 65 miles an hour. A lot of people don't realize that anything from like 60 back, you have to come to complete stop to shift into first. They're sitting there grinding, thinking something's wrong with it. Well, it's non-synchro mesh first. So these are all things that they're going to learn if they drive an early car before they save up all their money, only to find themselves very, very disappointed by the experience.
I think a Mexican Beetle might also be a late model Mexican Beetle after they stop making them other places. Is going to always be something. Probably is pretty cheap right now, but it's going to be something special in the future. You're going to be able to go to a car show and say, hey, I got a Mexican Beetle.
Nobody knows more about Mexis than Darby. Darby is Mr. Mexi Beetle. He's on a first-name basis with one of the top exporters in Mexico. And I agree with that too, but I think it's going to be a while before people are not so gun-shy to spend the money on them because of the whole Beetle Mex incident, people forging VINs so they could make them legal. There's a 25-year limit on bringing a Mexican Beetle in legally, same with cars from Japan. I know the import tuner guys are having a field day right now because the R32 Skylines are now legal to bring into the country. So I think you're going to find the same thing happening with these Mexican Beetles. And they're great cars. Same thing. I mean, Darby knows all about the fuel injection systems that they have. And it's amazing how many Mexis are actually running around out there. But I agree. I think the Mexi is another underrated car for sure. And once all the legalities are worked out, I think you're going to see a huge influx of Mexis coming into the country again.
You know, I always wanted a Mexican Beetle, but I think we're talking about something different. I thought it'd be cool to have one from Mexico City that was a taxi cab. One that had maybe 2 million miles on it. I always thought if I could get one and put it in the museum, would that be a cool car to look at?
I was actually about 3/4 of the way through the process for that. And I had actually consulted with Darby about that. I know you remember. And you got to keep in mind that these things, you know, every step of the way somebody tried to talk me out of this. They're like, you don't want that car. Think of like a checker cab in New York. And I'm like, I know, that's cool, right? I want that, you know? And they were like, no, you don't understand. Like, these things are held together with paper clips and Bondo. I don't care. I want it.
Yeah.
Well, when it got down to the brass tacks and we were like, okay, we're really going to do this here. It wasn't so much purchasing the actual Mexican taxi in green and white. It was paying off federales at border crossings. It was finding a way to get a travel visa for this Mexican citizen that's going to drive this thing across Laredo, where I will meet them, and drive it illegally back to Pennsylvania. It was a huge deal, and in the end, it was just too much of a risk. And so
So I'm not the only one that.
You're not the only one. We have very similar tastes in oddball type cars, but and we do actually get into that in the Bug movie. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the Mexican government outlawed Mexican taxis. The Beetle taxis in Mexico are all gone. If you go on the Samba, you'll find all of these just awful, awful pictures. We call it the Great Beetle Holocaust of Mexico because the government rounded these up. They paid the taxi owners like $1,000, maybe. Was that about what they were paying them?
1,000 pesos. That's 50
It's probably
cents.
more
Come
like
on.
1,000 pesos. It wasn't very much, and they crushed every single one of these cars. These are engine cores that we could have used. These are parts that we could have used up here, and it's really, really sad what happened. I just wanted to save one, but it just wasn't in the cards.
Well, and all right, I have one last question. Speaking of who wants to buy what Volkswagen, and I would like to go through each person to get an answer. If you had $25,000 to spend in a classic Volkswagen, what are you buying?
John, we'll start with you.
John.
Well, I'd have to buy, I've only owned a Volkswagen bus. It's the only one I've ever owned, a 67. So I guess I'd have to own that. It would have to be green, and it was a camper, so that would be it.
Third aisle down, second car on the right, John. We got you covered down here. There's one over there in green.
All right, Shell.
I'm interested in a T2 double cab, but you said $25,000.
Yes.
I've been looking at them, and you're not going to touch one for that.
The bumper for that, man.
Yeah, yeah. Second choice would be a 56 Beetle, which was my first Beetle, my first car, and it was in good shape. I had it for 5 years, and I got rid of it and bought a fastback because I was 22 years old and I wanted something that was faster. Now I wish I had that Beetle. It would be worth a lot of money.
I can't wait to hear this. He's owned almost every Volkswagen out there, so this is, I'm patiently waiting this answer.
Well, I hate to disappoint you. I've owned upwards of 500 Volkswagens in my life. I probably would take that $25,000 and divide it up a little bit and buy a few of my favorite cars.
Well, let's hear
Okay. I would dearly love to have the mid-70s Beetle again. I had one for 15 years and put almost 400,000 miles on the little car. It broke my heart to have to cut it up due to rust. I think I would like to have a, and I have to, preface this that I have the knowledge and the staff that can buy the single cab, as a junk and rebuild it. I think I'd like a single cab. I think that'd be a cool car to own. Karmann Ghias, they're neat, they're underrated. I think a Ghia convertible would be sharp, and a early 60s Beetle convertible I think would be maybe at the top of my list. I had one many years ago, sold it for stupid reasons and always lament. I think we've all got the car we lament selling, and I think that's mine, 64 Beetle convertible. So I think for my $25,000, Betsy, I'd probably get 5 or 6 of my dream cars.
You're going to get those for $5,000 a piece?
Yeah, you never know.
All right, Tory.
Hands down, oval window ragtop with semaphores. They're still out there in that price bracket. There's actually a blue one running around. It's an early car, European. It's got semaphores. It's a ribbed door car, meaning they got a different striker plate and a little fancier door that kind of goes back to the split era. I love those. Hard taillights, that gets me going. So I would buy an early oval ragtop with semaphores.
Well, now that we're dreaming on how to spend 25 grand. I know where I'm going to go and buy 25 Karmann Ghias. Or maybe early convertibles. Either one. I know where they are. I know I can get them for probably $1,000 because he's got hundreds of them. Are you listening? I'm going to get there first.
I'd like to have a single cab. I think all the work vehicles are the most interesting because they did so many purpose-built trucks. And I just think they're so cool.
But I had one. I had a 1950 single cab. And it had 25 horsepower and maybe 2.5 inches of travel, wheel travel up and down, 16-inch wheels, 6 volts. Hard riding, oh my God, I had concrete in its tires, but it was fun. And I bought it for $400 and sold it for $400 100 years ago.
I'm not going to tell you what that would be worth nowadays.
I don't want to hear it.
All right, well, thank you everybody for coming, and thank you to our experts. Let's hear it for the expert. Yes, and actually we do have time for a few questions. Does anybody have questions? Yes, right in the front.
This is for Bruce. Do you have any involvement with the new mid-travel like the Monster makes?
I'm sorry again.
Do you have any involvement in, I'm sorry, what was the rest?
In the mid-travel like the Monster?
In the mid-travel.
No.
Monster, yeah.
No. We play around with one of our kits, the Dual Sport, which has 15 inches of travel if you like. It's just got longer arms. It's got a 3-inch taller body, so that gives the room for the tires to go up and down farther. But that's just all Volkswagen based. You can do it either with torsion bars or with coilover springs. That's all. It's not uncommon in the off-road racing world to build a car like that.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, sir, in the back.
Go out and give him your mic.
Yeah.
Here you go.
In cars collecting, and nobody talked about the Kelmark, the Sebrinks, or any of those fiberglass body cars. What's the future of those? And the value of
He's
those?
talking about the collectability of early fiberglass cars.
Yeah, Kelmarks and the Sebrinks and cars like that.
If you ever come across, a Meyers Manx that has a hood that opens, buy it. That's one of the monocoques. There was only 12 of them built. About half of them have been found and restored. They'll be worth a bunch of money as time passes. But beyond that, a real Meyers Manx has more value than one of the other kinds. But that's fine. They all show some kind of respect for me, so I'm in love with all of them. I don't even hate any of them. Go find them.
And do I have any other questions?
I think your limo driver's coming up, Bruce. Look at this. This is, she's ready to capture you.
All right.
My mother is here.
She's going to
Bruce,
turn around and leave.
Tory,
Hey, there she goes.
Darby, Shell, John, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everybody. One round of applause.
Thanks, guys.